invite you to follow along with me as I continue this whole teaching on simple revolution. So here's the simple idea of this talk, is that I believe that Jesus came with a simple revelation from God. And that simple revelation sparked a revolution in his day. I think sometimes we make God, Jesus, Christianity way too complicated. That sometimes maybe we just need to step back a little bit and rediscover some of the basics. So that's what we've been doing in this series. We've been looking at some key moments in the life of Jesus when he walked the earth and looking at what we can learn from those instances. And we started by trying to get us to understand that John 3:16 doesn't give us the purpose of Jesus coming to earth. I mean, it does, but it really doesn't. It gives us the purpose why God sent him to the earth. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Well, that's God's purpose. God sent Jesus for that reason. But Jesus came, yes, to die on the cross, yes, to cover our sins, but Jesus actually came with a much more simple purpose. He came to a society that had messed up their understanding of God. And he came to make God known. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is a statement that Jesus made, and we've used it as our foundational scripture each week. We'll throw it up on the screen, or you can look on your note sheets. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. So these are the people Jesus is talking to. He's talking to people that are tired, they're worn out, and they were burned out on the religious teaching of their day. A teaching that made God so complicated, that was full of rules and regulation, that made life almost unlivable. And it was wearing them out. And Jesus said, come away with me. Leave that stuff. And you'll recover your life. In fact, I'll show you how to take a real rest. How many of you know there are times you can go to sleep and wake up more tired than when you lay down? Okay? You know what I'm saying? But then there are those other times where it's like you can take like a power nap. And it's like you've rested longer. Now, if you're one of those people, I need you to pray for me. Because if I take a power nap, I don't get up. I power out. You know? But there is a difference. There are those times where you rest and it really rejuvenates you. And Jesus is saying, I'll show you how to take a real rest, a rest that'll restore your life. Walk with me and work with me. So Jesus doesn't just want you to hang out with him. Jesus doesn't just want you to follow him. He actually wants you to do some stuff. Work with me and watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythm of grace. I'm going to be talking to you about that next week. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And about in March or April, when I started this study for myself in my own quiet personal time, I got to this last line, and I wrote something in my soap journal, and I've tried to allow this to happen. And the thought was this. What if God could teach me how to live without fear? I don't mean fear of jumping out of an airplane. Though I want to try that someday, I'll be scared to death. I'll wear underoos or something, some kind of Depends or something. I'll probably need that, but I'm going to try it one of these days. That's not the fear I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fear of messing up and angering God to the point that things go wrong. Have you ever, maybe you've grown up around church, and when things start to go bad in your life, you start looking around going, what have I done wrong? Okay, let me tell you something. It's not what you've done wrong, it's what you've done right, and what you've done right is live. And if you live in this earth, things are going to go bad and they're going to go good. If you go to the beach, the water is not always going to come in on your feet nice and soft. Okay? Sometimes it comes in harder, sometimes it comes in higher, sometimes it comes in slower, because that's how life is. There will be good times and there will be bad times. So look, just chill out. If things take a downturn, don't freak out. Don't get afraid. Don't blame God. Just keep living and keep yourself full of hope, because the tides of your life will also change. So Jesus came to these people, and I think the first line on your blank sheet that I want you to fill in is this whole idea. I'm trying to get you to grab it, that Jesus came to these people who had a warped understanding of God, and he came to make God known. He said, I want to give you and show you who God really is. And so Jesus began to do things. He began to do things specifically that went against culture. One of the things that he did was he walked up to a guy who was a tax collector. His name was Matthew. And Matthew, being a tax collector and a Jew, he had sided with the Romans and the occupiers of their land, so he was outcast by his own society. And he was outcast so far that he wasn't even allowed to go into the church building at the time, which was called the temple, and he wasn't allowed to offer sacrifices with the rest of the Jews and worship God. He was just kicked out. He was out there. He was despised. And in fact, they taught their children that if you even hang out with a tax collector, the sin of the tax collector will get on you. The icky stuff will get on you. So here comes here comes Jesus to this icky, despised Jewish tax collector named Matthew, and Jesus walks up to him and says, "Hey, come follow me." And I'm sure Peter and James and John and Matthew and all the other good Jews, the good religious Jews who went to the temple, the tabernacle all the time, and I'm sure they got along with Jesus and said, "Hey man, if he hangs out with you, that means he's got to hang out with us. And if he hangs out with us, the ickiness of him will get on us, and we're just not cool with that." But when Jesus invited Matthew, he was saying to everyone around that anyone can follow me. Anyone. If you're icky, you can follow. If your life's messed up, you can follow. If you're not from the right family, you can follow. If your skin's not the right color, as if there's a wrong color, you can follow. I was talking with one of my relatives who they lead a network of churches in the northeastern part of the state, and she was telling me about one of their pastors and that they just installed at one of their historic churches, and how that it's a young family, and they showed up, and the lady, you just have to understand rural Oklahoma, but the family showed up, and the lady shows up with a nose ring thing piercing in her ear. Yeah, rural Oklahoma. Yeah. And they talked to her. They were like, what's the deal with that in your nose? And she just began to talk to him about what it stood for and why she does it. And she said, but the great thing is it doesn't change how God sees me. It just affects how you see me. And they accepted that family, nose ring and all, as their pastors in rural Oklahoma. Because she's got it right. Anyone can follow Jesus. Then Jesus begins to teach, and people begin to follow, and he gets his crowd, and he was the rock star of his day. And Jesus began to teach this one time, and the stuff that he was teaching was really going against their culture. I mean, it was challenging them all the way to the point that many people began to leave him. They quit following him. All these people dispersing, and Jesus turns to those who were closest to him and said, hey, are you guys going to be former followers too? Are you going to be those who at one time you were real close to me, but now you're walking away from me? In fact, some of you may be in this theater right now this morning that's you. That at one time you were one of those that was close to God, close to Jesus, but you're one of those former followers that's walked away from him. Maybe because you thought Christianity was too hard. Maybe because bad things happened and you blamed God and there was a wedge there. I don't know. But there's a lot of us that are former followers. But Peter turns and he makes this dramatic statement. To whom shall we go? For you have the words of life. Then he says this, for we have come to know and believe that you are the Son of God. Now think about that. We have come to know. If you come to know something, that means at one time you didn't know it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they were saying, here's Peter, Peter the rock, Peter the apostle, the dude, the man. And he's saying, hey, Jesus, I've come to know. I didn't know when I started following you. But as I've followed you, I've come to know and I've come to believe that you are exactly who you say you are, the Son of God. So not only can anyone follow, guess what? Your following will lead to your believing. You don't have to believe anything. You can still follow, but I promise you, if you'll really follow Jesus, you'll find yourself coming to believe in him. Then we find that the following will lead to believing. But once you begin believing, you've got to deal with all these teachings of Jesus. And here's the next point, is that believing leads us to obeying his teachings. Sometimes in church, we just want you to obey. We don't even care if you're following or believing. Just obey. Just toe the line. Just be like us. Do like we do. Blah, 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 blah. Well, not around here. I just want you to know, if you're someone who's just following and you haven't even decided yet if you believe, welcome. If you're someone who's following and you've accepted Jesus as your Savior and you're allowing Him to change your life, welcome. If you're someone who is following, believing, and you know Jesus has changed your life and now you're grappling with the teachings of Jesus and its impact on you and you're struggling to learn to obey and change your life and make better decisions, welcome. But my next question was, well, what are the things Jesus taught that we're to obey? And I narrowed a bunch of things down, and I think we can put them into 3 compartments, and we talked about the first one last week. That Jesus wanted us to serve others ahead of ourselves. Jesus himself said that he knew exactly who he was, but that he came to serve and not be served. And we talked about that last week. Today I want to jump and actually build right on top of that this idea that if we simply serve, Jesus also wants us to simply give. Now hold on. Look at your neighbor and say, hang on. Some of you, when you hear giving by people like me in settings like this, you think, okay, here he comes, he's going to talk about my money. What if Jesus' whole idea of giving was much deeper and broader than giving of your money in an offering plate? What if Jesus was after something different, something broader, something deeper? And what if we've messed up the idea of giving, and what if we've cheapened it? Let me show you what I think Jesus might have meant. Luke chapter 10, verses 30 through 35. We're going to read a couple of stories today. We're going to read a lot of scriptures. Just hang with me, all right? Here we go. Jesus replied with this story. If you want to know what Jesus is replying to, you can read a few verses up. But what you'll find is that Jesus is responding to some Jewish religious leaders who have asked him a question. And one of the statements that Jesus makes is, okay, if you love God, then you need to love your neighbor as yourself. And this religious leader said, well, who are my neighbors? And Jesus replies with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him up, and they left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along. But when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. Many fantastic messages have been preached about this story. Let me give you my little piece. Notice this priest, he's the religious leader of his community. He's not just a preacher, he's not just a pastor. This guy wields all kinds of influence in his society. So here comes the influential leader of the society. He sees someone, one of his own family, a Jew, is beaten and lying on the side of the road, and he doesn't take the time for him. I hope you really understand that some of the people we look up to in society as our leaders, who say they care about us when times are tough, probably don't care as much as we want them to. I think that's what this priest represents. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there. But he also passed by on the other side. So first you've got a leader of the society, is what the priest represents. And then you've got a temple assistant. A temple assistant is someone who hung out in the presence of God all day. They took care of the tabernacle and all the stuff in there. Have you ever met Christians that it's just like they worship all the time? Like they're always singing worship songs and Facebooking fantastic quotes, and it's like they just live with Jesus all the time. Have you ever wondered, do you like do anything else? Do you live at all? Or do you just hang out here with Jesus all the time? That would be fantastic. Wouldn't it be great if you could just hang out with Jesus all the time and your bills would get paid all by themselves? Wouldn't it be okay if you could just hang out with Jesus all the time and worship and life would never get you down? Please understand, I love to worship Jesus, and I would love to be one of those kind of people. I'm just not. But I think that this temple assistant represents those kind of people, and notice what he did when he saw someone hurting. He actually went over and at least looked at him, but he never touched him. He never helped him. and he left him exactly as he was. You know what? Sometimes we can be so heavenly minded, we're of no good to anybody. Sometimes we can be so concerned about hanging out in the presence that we never take the presence to the present. So to this religious leader, Jesus uses two people that he would have looked up to. Then a despised Samaritan. A Samaritan is a half-breed. It's where a Jew and a Gentile intermarried and had a child. And next to tax collectors, Samaritans were the next worst people of the society. A despised. Can you just imagine being despised? A despised Samaritan comes along. And when he saw the man, underline this, he felt compassion for him. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Now look, just to show you how crazy this guy is. I'm not someone who drinks wine. Okay? But I've been around and I've got family members that drink wine and they have these cases in their house with it. And I'm telling you, Dylan, it's like that bottle's another baby. I mean, you take care of it. You know what I'm saying? You know, anybody know what I'm talking about, man? You ever see somebody that, man, their liquor is just like their baby? It's expensive, right? Would you take that and pour it on a stranger's wounds? And yet this man did that. He took something that was expensive and spent it on someone else's hurt. He bandaged him. Then he put the man on his own donkey, took him to an inn where he took care of him. Notice he didn't just drop him off at the inn and say, take care of him and toss a couple of coins down. That's how I always heard the story. But he stayed at the inn with this stranger who he had just poured expensive wine on and he had taken time. He was obviously on a journey. He obviously had somewhere to go, but the needs of this guy trumped his own plans. He takes care of this guy. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. And if his bills run higher than that, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. 3 things I want to point out to you. Number 1, the Samaritan cared about the hurting man. I had you underline the statement. He felt compassion for him. Number 2, some people give money so they don't have to care. Some people see a problem and they want to throw money at it, but they don't really want to care enough about the problem to get involved in the problem. And sometimes in the church, we've done that. We've said, we want to raise money for this or this, and we want you to give money for this or this, and blah, blah, blah. And we give the money, and then we don't even care really what happens to the need. Or we see this all the time on TV. Send your $14 to sponsor a child in Africa. And so we give our $14 a month. It makes us feel good. We feel better. Hey, we're giving back, you know. But are you really caring? What if this guy's story that Jesus wanted to impact his society with centered around this idea? That this despised Samaritan's caring drove his giving. What if before he gave, he first cared? What if Jesus, one of his tenets of teaching was that I want you to serve others above yourself. And then if you're going to serve them, I want you to start caring for them. And what if once we start caring for people, we'll find giving is not nearly as difficult. I remember how it was to be single. I had trinkets and toys. I had money in the bank. I had a lot of money in savings. Then Chandra happened. My caring drove my giving right out of the savings account. We'd been dating about 4 months, and I was taking her to nice restaurants, man. I mean, I was in love with this girl, still am. I mean, we were going on dates, like going to the haunted house, and I'm not talking about the Halloween one. If you've ever been to the haunted house, it's a very good steak restaurant. I mean, we were going to high dollar places. I mean, we were dressing up nice. I was doing my best to impress her, and I blew through almost $2,000 in 3 months. And when I told her, she got mad. Can you believe that, ladies? She got mad. She said, "Do you think I have to be treated like a princess all the time?" "Yeah, I do, actually." He said, "Well, that was stupid. I'd have been happy with Taco Bell." I was like, "I ain't taking you to Taco Bell." Now I take her to Taco Bell. But anyway, my caring drove my giving. And that I had worked so hard to save. The only person I wanted to spend it on was the person I cared for. Now, some of us have gone to churches and we've heard preachers like me talk about giving, and we fight and we resist and we hold on with everything we have to this little thing in the back of our pocket. Let me tell you why. It's because you don't care. The reason why we struggle giving to a church is because we really don't care about the church. The reason why we struggle giving to needs in our society is because we really don't care about the needs in our society. But if we will care, we'll find that our caring will drive our giving. Let me show you another story just to prove my point even farther. Luke 18, verses 18 through 23. Once a religious leader asked Jesus this question. Notice it's always the religious leaders that got issues. Anyway. "Good teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" This is a message in and of itself if you've never seen this. "Why do you call me good?" Jesus said. "Only God is truly good." I love that line. Anyway, but to answer your question, you know the commandments. You must not commit adultery. You must not murder. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely. Honor your father and your mother. The man replied, "I've obeyed all these commandments since I was young." This is a pretty impressive man, don't you think, if this is true? When Jesus heard his answer, he said, "There's still one thing you haven't done. Sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Then come follow me." When the man heard this, he became very sad, for he was very rich. Now, I've said in many settings like this and heard preachers preach this story, my dad being one of them. I've even, I think, used this scripture and just tried to challenge people. We need to give, we need to give, we need to give. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. I don't think the problem with this man was that he was rich. I think the problem with this man was that he cared more about himself than he did others. Sell everything you have and give it to the poor. But he couldn't do that because he didn't care enough about them to let his caring drive his giving. You see, you can either give because in the Bible there are definite blessings and promises tied to us honoring God with our money, giving our tithes on a regular basis, obeying God. Look, I can't make the Bible say what it says. Malachi 3 says if we'll give, God will bless. That is what it says. But I don't think God just wants us to give without caring. And I think in this story we can see that this young man had an issue because he cared more about himself than he cared about others. And because he cared more about himself, he spent on himself instead of giving to others. See, you're going to do something with your money. You're either going to spend it on you or you're going to give it to someone else. Then the early church comes into play after Jesus leaves. These are people led by men who witnessed Jesus, hung out with Jesus, got to know Jesus, and now they're turning and they're telling all these other people the things that Jesus taught, and they begin to gather people together. The youth is watching a movie that I would encourage every single one of you, if you have a Netflix subscription, I want to encourage you to watch the movie Beware of Christians. Everybody should watch this. What it is it's 4 college kids, 4 young boys who were raised in church of various different kinds, but they're struggling with the way that Christianity has been taught to them and just some inner questions that they have. So what they did was the 4 of them took a journey to Europe. And they go to different countries. And as they're in different countries, what they're doing is they're asking people about Christians and their culture. And they're trying to allow the experience to kind of challenge them to an authentic connection with Jesus. And they were in one city called Budapest, Hungary. And they decided while in Budapest, Hungary, they were there for several days, that they were going to take the money that they had allocated for food for themselves. And they were going to pool all that money together for the days that they were in Hungary, and they were going to go hungry. They were going to fast. And they were going to take that money, and they were going to go find the poorest people that they could find, and they were going to try to make their life as good as possible. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. But they didn't go and find someone who was holding a cardboard sign on a street corner. No. They actually went and found out where a group of homeless people hung out. And they spent the entire day with these people. And after spending multiple hours talking to them and just hearing their stories, they took 10 of them and went and bought them brand new shoes. Some of them was the first pair of brand new shoes they had had in many years. They left that day after spending more time with them. They cared first, then they gave. They were then at the MARTA getting on a train going back to the place where they were staying. And there was a man walking through the MARTA. And he asked, "Can you spare a few dollars for food?" And one of the guys said, "Well, man, we're hopping on this train and going to go eat pizza. Why don't you just come with us?" The guy obviously had nothing better to do. So they got him on the train and he went with them, and they went into a pizza house and spent 4 hours listening to this man's story. And they fed him as they ate. And they asked this man, "Tell us about the Christians that you've met." And he said, "Oh, the Christians don't pay any attention to people like me." They cared, and their caring drove their giving. After watching this last week, I was going through my SOAP guide, my study notes, looking over my talk for today. And I found some comments that I had made, and I made a decision that I was going to take my children on an adventure. That I wanted my children to experience the giving message of Jesus. And so we got together one morning this week, and I read them this scripture, this description of the early church. And all the believers met together in one place. Look, they shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day. They met in homes for the Lord's Supper. They shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. Notice, they were worshiping all the time, but they also were giving and caring to those who were in need. And those two things together make an irresistible combination. So I talked to my children. Why did these people sell their possessions, sell their land, and give to those that were in need? The The reason they did is because they were there when Jesus told the story about the Good Samaritan who cared and bandaged somebody's wounds and poured expensive wine and then stayed with this guy in the hotel and then paid for his bill after he had cared for him. They were probably there when Jesus talked to the religious leader and talked to him about how that to really be saved, to really experience the fullness of God's grace, you need to be willing to care for others and spend on others more than you spend on yourself. So for them, it was normal. But I really began to wrap my brain around this idea that we can give and not care. So I had honestly planned I had bought 2 extra loaves of bread, and my kids and I, we were going to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and put them in baggies, and we were going to go downtown, and we were going to hand out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and bottles to perfect strangers. Now that sounds like a great thing, don't you think? The only problem is there's no caring involved, and I wouldn't have been teaching my children the very point I'm trying to make to you today. Some people give so they don't have to care. And I think sometimes we do that to make ourselves feel better. Well, I gave back. I began to think about, well, what are the things that I care about that I could take my children and teach them? And what I'm about to tell you is not something I'm telling you have to do. It's something I'm hoping to give you an example that you'll follow. Sometimes kids, it's easier for them to care for other kids. You know what I'm saying? I got them in the van. I picked them up from Dale and Pauline's house. And I took them to Bethany, Oklahoma. And we spent an hour touring the Children's Center. When you leave today, I have one of these for every one of you. The Children's Center is a fantastic ministry, ministering to people that you and I would probably not even know how to bandage their wounds. Kids that, through no fault of their own, many of them are debilitated, behind. I used to volunteer here when I was in college. And when I took the tour, I remembered why. You know, it's one thing to care and to give and to have someone say thank you. By the way, thank you for loving on my family last week. Thank you for your gifts and your cards. Mean the world. As I'm walking through here, I'm remembering the little kids that I used to set and rock that couldn't even look me in the face. That you give because you care. And I watched as we were walking through the Children's Center, as my little Shaylin's eyes, when we got to one of the physical therapy rooms, and her eyes just lit up, and her nose was pressing against the glass, looking through the blinds. As we were in one of the rooms where they do music therapy, where these kids that can't sing, almost every one of them in wheelchairs. And the lady was walking around letting these kids choose little drums that they could play. And she had recorded certain songs, and on each of their little tables was a box with a red button. And they knew whenever they heard a certain word, they could hit that button. And you heard these kids, it was like they were singing and participating. And their faces lit up. And Shaylin lost her heart. As we began walking through the Children's Center, I told all 3 of my children, I said, I want you to open your heart. And if you find yourself caring, how about we talk about adopting one of these children, and we take some of our presents under our tree, and you come and give them to these kids. We walked into one of the physical therapy rooms, and though my son is not emotional like I am, and I know emotional men who are speaking, I'm sorry, I'm not emotional. I'm hard. I'm mean. I'm angry. But my son's, his heart is in his chest, and it's there, and he loves, but he doesn't express it kind of like I do. But if you know Jonathan, you can see the look on his face. And we were in this one physical therapy room. I promise I'm hurrying. But there was this one little black boy who was in this wheelchair, and he couldn't even look straight. His head was kind of braced. And there was this worker, and they had set up one of these little, I don't know, the little basketball goals that you can get for your kids when they're like 2 years old. You know what I'm saying? The big plastic ones. And it was sitting on the floor there, and one of the male volunteers he had this ball, and Marcus would lift his hand up about like that, and he would hit the ball, and the volunteer would take it and shoot it through the hoop. And when it would go through the hoop, we all cheered, and Marcus's face lit up. And Jonathan lost his heart. And as we were leaving, he just kindly said, "Hey, Dad, that boy with the basketball, I think I would like to adopt him." Do you understand what I set myself up for? I set myself up to have my children engage their heart, knowing it would change my pocketbook. But then hoping that would happen exactly what happened. And as we were leaving, I set them down outside, and I was going to show you the video, but honestly, I would have cried. As I videoed little Madison with my flip camera, as soon as we walked out, I said, "Madison, what did you think of what you saw today?" And she said, "Daddy, it was sad. But it was good at the same time." "Well, honey, what do you mean it was sad? And what do you mean it was good?" He said, "It was sad that those kids have to live in a hospital. But it was good that people cared enough to love on them." Jesus doesn't want us to just give. We need to learn that Jesus was teaching that we should give to what we care about. That we should give to the things that we care for. I'm a regent at a university. It's not that big of a deal. But I got to hang out with guys like Bob Mills, and yeah, that guy wears more money on his shoes than I make in a year. We got to tour my university that I graduated from, and they thought enough of me to ask me to be a regent several years ago. And I've given to Southwestern, but I honestly hadn't toured the grounds in, a long time. And one of the new committees that I was appointed to required that I tour the campus, and they never should have done that. Because it just so happened, I write my messages 3 weeks in advance, so I'd already been practicing. I'd already been crying. I'd already been preaching to myself about caring and then giving, and how that sometimes we can give so we don't care. And I realized that when it came to Southwestern Christian University, I'd been giving without caring, because if I really cared, this wouldn't have been the first time in 20 years that I'd walked the campus. And I walked through the campus, and I saw the exact same tables that my wife and I used to sit at and take notes on. Now, please tell me, how good a condition do you think 20-year-old tables are in? Not very good. I saw the exact same chairs that my rear end used to grace every day. 20 years ago. How good a condition do you think those were in? I saw where in one of the classrooms they'd invested in a projector system for the teachers, and they didn't, the walls in this room were flat, so they did a great thing, I think. They just painted a white square on the wall, you know what I'm saying, and just shot it on the wall. Well, Dylan, and then they decided to recently buy the big, 47-inch TVs and hang them on the wall and get rid of the projectors. Now, doesn't that sound like a great deal? See? The only problem is you would have thought they would have painted over the square. Somebody gave the TV, and somebody didn't care enough to do it right. I walked into the library that I used to spend many hours in. Now, look, this was 20 years ago. I don't know about you, but I just don't think that my son, when he gets to college, is going to be studying on books. He's going to be going to Google. And so, on one of the walls, and I'm telling on my own university, on one of the walls there was 5 holes from where something had hung on the wall and they had taken it off, and they did that 2 years ago, and yet they never filled in the holes. And I thought, there's a lot of people who give. There's not enough people who care. And I walked through my campus and had a very vivid, personal message from God that said, son, why don't you quit giving and start caring first and let your caring drive your giving? But here's my challenge to you today, is that godly giving involves more than finances. It is driven by our hearts. I do not want you to give in this offering in just a moment because we need finances so that we can help secure a building soon. I don't want you to give in this offering because you help take care of the needs of our church. I want you to care. Care about this place. Care about what you're feeling right now, and let your caring drive your giving. Because see, when we care and then we give, we're not giving, we're investing. And all of us invest to get a return. So here's 3 places where to invest ourselves. I would encourage you first to invest yourselves in your family. Invest yourselves in your families. Find ways to teach your children values now that you want them to have when they're your age. I want all 3 of my children to be people who care and give. Invest in your family. Invest, dads, like I said last week, in daddy-daughter dates and mamas and mama-son outings. Dads, invest time with your boys. I can tell when I made mention that I'm still going to go play golf today, someone's probably going, why are you going to go play golf in the cold and the wet? Well, first of all, because it might be the last chance I get this year. So, more importantly, I want to hang out with you. You see, my son's going to go today. I want to hang out with him. So, it doesn't matter as long as I'm with him. Invest in your family. Secondly, invest in your future. Invest in your future. Don't just spend everything you make. Learn to save. Learn to invest in your future. Make your money work for you. Don't just spend it all. But thirdly, the most important place to invest in is to invest in what moves your heart. Invest in the things that move your heart. I am not telling you that you have to adopt a child. I am going to tell you that as a church, we accepted donations last year for the Children's Center. And we wanted to set up a tour where you could go and see. Because my thing is if you see it, you'll lose your heart. And if you lose your heart, you're opening up yourselves to learn from God a deep and powerful truth. Don't just give, but care. But we're going to take donations again. After the Thanksgiving holiday, we're going to host a chili cook-off. So all of you guys dust off your chili recipes and see if you can beat mine. Bring it. Not only our church, but also my mom and dad's church, the Crown Center. They're talking about it this morning. And then what I want you to do is we're going to have tickets ready. We want you to invite all of your friends to come and eat chili. It will cost you nothing. So we better have a lot of chili. But what we're asking is that everyone who comes and eats brings something off of this list that you're going to get. Now, I would encourage you to do diapers, and their information's on this sheet, and Burt Bees lip balm. Okay? They're just everyone in your family who comes to eat, just bring one for every person. And then we're going to collect that, and we're going to take it to the Children's Center, and we're going to bless them. And we're going to know that those diapers are going to go on kids who need them. And that special Burt Bees lip balm is going to go on their lips so that they don't get too chapped as they put them in seclusion here in just a couple of weeks to try to help keep them healthy because so many of their immune systems are so low. To help you do that, I would like to invite all of you. I know you have plans, and I know it's a short notice. But if you can sit here today and your heart's not moved, then I'm a horrible communicator. I want to invite every one of you to join me and my family as we take another tour of the Children's Center this Wednesday night at 6:30. If you would like to go, my family is going to leave the parking lot of the Crown Center at 6 o'clock. Just caravan up there. All of the youth, you're going to be going with me. So come on, bring your mamas and daddies, because I don't have enough seats for everybody. Meet us at the Crown Center at 6 o'clock. The tour only takes